Like I really hustled so that I felt worthy and that I felt like I could belong in the world, and underneath that so that then I feel safe. So I get it. And yet the game will always, like, life is designed to show you where you're not free. Yeah. It's designed to give you a challenge for you to be confronted. And if you're just trying to win on the surface level of like achieving,
baby,
you're going to burn out. Something's going to happen, and that's not a bad thing. And I want whoever's listening to be like, if they're going through a challenging time, this is an upgrade.
Can't be contained.
That's what I'm talking about.
Alyssa, welcome to the Can't Be Contained podcast.
I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so excited to dive into your body of work because being your friend, I feel like I get front seat of your genius and your brilliance, and you've had a massive impact in my own life when it comes to my romantic relationship. So that's where I want to open up here.
Let's do it.
You are just like full of wisdom when it comes to romantic relationships. So before we get into that, the first question we ask all of our guests is, what is the number one thing that is making you feel most alive?
Presence. I just got back from a 5-day retreat with Byron Katie, and it's like coming back to the moment, not what I'm thinking about the moment, but just coming back to the moment helps me feel alive, helps me feel the aliveness that is always here. And I think sometimes when we're in our head, we can lose sight of that. And so coming back into presence, I just am reminded of the aliveness that's running through my body. I know that for me, like a practice that helps me feel alive is dancing. Yes. You know, just putting on a good song and dancing. I feel most myself when I dance. I feel most alive, but really presence 100% of the time.
You know what's interesting about presence and gratitude? It's talked about so much because it's so powerful, but I think people hear that and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. Can you kind of break down for us the mechanics of presence and what you sort of focus on and do to bring yourself into the present moment, especially for people who have ADHD.
Yeah,
people who
I have ADHD. And actually meditation supported me in moving through ADHD and having more focus. I think social media can create I think the younger generations, like my kids, have ADHD as a set point just based on how we're conditioned. But like for presence, like feeling the energy and the aliveness percolating through your feet and your hands right now. So as we bring our attention into the body, we get out of the mind so much and we remember, oh, there's this well of well-being that's just like coursing through my body. And so just breathing or feeling the energy in my feet and in my hands helps me drop out of the mind where all the problems are created, where like boredom and stagnation is created, and just drops back into the present moment.
So good.
You know, and I think just having a meditation practice regularly supports witnessing the mind, observing the mind rather than getting absorbed by it. So even just being awake to the mind.
Yeah.
Because the mind's going to do what it does, but am I going down the rabbit hole or is there awareness prior to it? That's where the aliveness is. So just witnessing the mind. I think a lot of people, and I don't know how deep your audience will go, but people talk about the observer. There's not really an observer. It's an observing.
Ooh.
There's no one observer. There's not like a woman or a person in the back that's like observing. It's just an awareness. It's just an awareing. And so taking the energy back and the awareness back to observe the mind actually wakes us up out of it, where all the joy and the creativity and the spontaneity and the aliveness are.
You know, a couple weeks ago, I was sitting with my mentor at my house and we were doing some speech coaching, working on my next keynote. And I was having a particularly hard day. And I just turned to him, I'm like, Patrick, I just can't wait for this to be over. And he looks at me, he goes, be so present in it and let yourself just be there with it.
Yeah.
Don't rush it.
Yeah.
Don't wish it away. Use it. Use every morsel of it and bring yourself to an extreme place of presence to fully experience the aliveness that this thing is this thing is bringing you. And I was like, well, that's a reframe. All right.
Yeah.
So there is such magic and medicine in presence. I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, even with something that's quote unquote challenging, when we really present it from fresh in this moment, not with a past of this means pain, or this means this is what's going to happen in the future. Just like Etch-a-Sketch, clean slate, this is what it is. When it's fully allowed, it actually offers us what we're deeply desiring. So ironically, the thing that we're avoiding is the key to our freedom.
So good.
And so when we fully bring presence to that stuck energy in our stomach, we feel more free. We feel more aliveness, because that presence allows it to be here. And that allowance is all it was looking for. I think of different parts of us or different sensations in our bodies like kids, or thoughts like little kids. They're throwing a tantrum and they just need a hug. And then they're off playing again. It doesn't have to take long. Yeah. It's like, I see you, I'm with you. Breathe into it, allow it. Just, can I be with this? And then it moves on. And then we feel more present and productive, ironically, in our life. You often
talk about the source of suffering is the resistance to that process.
That's right.
Can you go deeper into that?
Yeah. So people say it's hard to be with this, but it's hard to avoid it. It's hard to resist it. So what's challenging is that we're not fully allowing it. And neuroscientists has found that it only takes 90 seconds to be with a sensation before it moves through. And so if we keep feeling a feeling longer than 90 seconds, we're thinking it into existence rather than just allowing it to breathe into it, to just allow it to be there for 90 seconds, and it dissolves.
It is so fascinating how we are these gigantic science experiments that can create all of these different sensations moment by moment. And through our awareness, through our breath, through our focus, we can really shift that density back into divinity and just free ourselves. It's fascinating.
And I think we just need more examples and more people saying it, and more of us just testing that out. I like that you say you're a scientist, because then we're going to test what's actually true for us, not what I was told, not what I've watched. Because if we just keep following what most people are doing, we're going to be like most people, and most of our society is suffering. So why not be willing to experiment and try something different? Be, like you say, the scientist in your own life.
Yeah. Own experience. So a couple years ago, right after Eric and I got engaged, I drove up to your house and we sat on these chairs.
Yeah.
And I was going through a particularly challenging time in my relationship because I had just gotten engaged. All of my stuff was coming up. It was hitting me in the face. It was spewing everywhere. And it was hard. And I came to you and I was like, Alyssa, is it supposed to be like this? Like, I had this idea that when I got engaged, it would be this fantasy land and it would just be so beautiful and I wouldn't have any problems. It sounds so funny saying it now. But one of the key lessons that you shared in that moment was everything that is arising is happening for you, and it's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to look a certain way. So can you go a little bit deeper into that? I think people get tripped up in relationships because we do have this fantasy complex.
We do. We've been
Thank you, Disneyland.
Brainwashed through Disneyland, through Disney, through all like mainstream media to think like, you solve all my problems, you complete me. And so a lot of people think I shouldn't fight, or that means something's wrong, but it's really not about the arguments. It's about the repair. What is the repair process? Science shows this. It's like, it's not how you fight, it's how you move through it. Do you grow stronger, and are you closer together because of it? And you can have your partner do the work, or you can do the work. That's the beautiful thing. You don't even need them to do the work for you to be free. And so
wait, pause.
Let's double tap
people
on that.
Listening are like, wait, what?
For those in the back.
This is a limited belief in many people, and I want your perspective on this. So what you're saying is, if I'm hearing you correctly, your partner doesn't actually have to do the work if you take 100% responsibility.
That's right.
Can you double click?
Yeah. So most people want the partner to show up. You know, I hear this all the time, like, oh, my partner needs you as a coach or as a therapist. And I'm like, that's an indicator that you want to do the work around your thoughts or around your projections of your partner. So we do not need somebody else to change for us to be free. Thank God. Thank God. Because if we were dependent, our happiness, our okayness was in somebody else's hands, we'd feel so disempowered and we would be held back. But really, we just get to look at, what are they mirroring to me within myself? What's the pattern? What's the trigger? And where does it stem from within usually childhood? And how do I resolve that at the root in me? Because if I change, then the relationship changes, the dance changes. And that's good news. It's beautiful. It's such a gift when we have partners that are willing to do the work, but that's the cherry on top. That's a bonus. It's not required, because sometimes our partners are emotionally unavailable, they're not willing, or we don't have a partner. And so to be able to feel empowered to, I used to use my relationships with girlfriends as a mirror, knowing that as I worked through any trigger that happened in a friendship, then I was healing it within me. And then I didn't have to play it out in my next relationship. I was like, I'm just doing the work, like cleaning out the trash so that it's even more easy when I get to the relationship that I want to be in. But a lot of people move through the world thinking that others need to change, but that's like locking ourselves in a room and throwing away the key. We hold the power.
Right. So let's talk about that point where a woman is in a relationship or a man is in a relationship, and it's that choice point of, am I going to go all in and do the work with this person who's not willing to do the work, or should I bounce and find someone who will?
Yeah.
How do you discern the difference between that?
That's a great question. And I would say there's non-negotiables. Okay. So some people are like, no, I want a relationship where somebody's growing and evolving with me. And that's a non-negotiable. And I would say there's like, I don't know, at least a handful of things that are like, this is really important for me. These are my values. And these are things that I really desire in relationship. And you can stay true to that. Yeah. But my biased perspective is that no matter if I stay with that person or not, thinking prior to being married, I would use every relationship for my healing and evolution. Because I knew that if a trigger came up, I wanted to work it as quickly as possible in me so I didn't have to project it onto the next partner or employee or friend because it's mine. It's not theirs. People come around. It's like them knocking on the door and our triggers answer it. Yeah. Those triggers were inside of us. They didn't make us triggered, but they activated the trigger that was inside. Yeah. And so when we open the door, it's like, well, what was coming up in me and where does it need my own love and attention? How do I resolve that? So I'm sure unpack different ways in my own methodology to resolve those triggers at the root so that you can feel more whole, feel more connected, feel like you're empowered to use that relationship. One thing that I think people misunderstand is that they want to come to the conclusion, should I stay or leave? Without actually doing the work first.
I see.
And then they're divided. So they're like, should I stay or leave? Just answer that. And I'm like, work the trigger so that you use it regardless. And then once the trigger's gone, the clarity of what to do next and what your truth is revealed.
Oh, that's so good.
Because I can't answer that for you. I'm going to have different requirements in relationship. But if you work the trigger, the clarity, it's like the clouds part. You're like, oh, wow, without the trigger, I really enjoy this relationship. Or without the trigger, now I'm at peace. But I'm clear I don't want to participate in a dynamic like this. Or with the trigger changing, maybe they change because you're no longer playing that same dance. So the action will come from the clarity. But I always say, like, do the work, because when you leave, you can leave being pissed off or at peace. Yeah. The leaving is the same, but if you're pissed off, that's hurting you more than it's hurting someone else. So even if somebody wronged you or hurt you, how do you still use it to grow, even if you choose to leave, so that you feel that centeredness, so that you don't take it with you?
This is a powerful conversation, because I think a lot of the narrative in the personal development industry as it pertains to relationships if your partner's not willing to grow, see you later. Out. So this is actually a really refreshing viewpoint and it just made me go,
yeah.
For myself personally, being in relationships where my partner was not willing to do the work, and then being in a relationship where he is, that's definitely my non-negotiable.
Same.
You know, that's really important to me. I could feel in my last relationship, he wasn't willing to do the work. Beautiful man, amazing guy, super cool, super funny, but just not into it, which is totally great. This is his life path,
That's right.
And I could always feel this part of me that was not met. You know, he met me in so many other ways, and there was this insatiable desire to be met.
Yeah.
And with Eric is willing to do the work, and he is willing to go there, and it feels fun. Yeah. You say a dance, right?
Yeah.
Like, we love dancing. It does feel like a dance. And what's cool about that dynamic is I get to experience so many different flavors of this man. You know, I'm like, you're a new person every single day.
He is.
Like, oh my gosh, you like worked that piece last week and now you're totally different, you know? And it's so fun. It keeps it so energizing and so exciting. So I was grateful that I was honest with myself about what I really desired, because my last relationship was hard to leave because he was a good man.
Yeah. I had a similar situation. You know, the mind would tell you like, he's great, there's nothing wrong, but you have to follow your truth. And I think the more honest we are, the more we get to be met in life. And we learn to meet the parts of ourselves that don't feel met. And then we attract a partner that then mirrors that shows up in a way that meets us. But then we're not needing it from them.
Yeah.
That's a bonus.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, the depth of intimacy. It's like once you taste that, I know there's the fear of it because I had a lot of that and I worked through it. But once you taste that, there's nothing else that can compare. It's like it's so beautiful. And you can have that with all of life. You don't just have that with a special one. Everyone is here to evolve your soul. Everyone is your soulmate. So you can have that with a flower. You can have that with the mailman. You can have that with the male woman, or, you know, depending on exactly. You can have that with everything and everyone. There's a deeper way of connecting and having intimacy. And once I've tasted that, there's nothing else that satisfies it. And it's just such a beautiful way to live. But the triggers are meant to come up. Just like in business, the same things happen in love. We say we want to grow our businesses, and then all the things that are unresolved, or in our relationship, I want this person, all the things that were holding me back from experiencing that comes up so that I can transform it and really let myself receive what it is I deeply desire.
Can we talk about the resistance to intimacy? Because I think this is just a fascinating conversation, and one that I know is going to land so deeply for our audience. What are the signs of someone who is fearful of intimacy?
Somebody that doesn't have it.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's always an unconscious intention for everything that's playing out. So if we don't have the intimacy that we want, we have an unconscious fear that we will be hurt if we did get it. Wow. And so if you're craving more, I would always say start with yourself. Start with the part of you that wants deeper intimacy. Have intimacy with that part of you, right? So for example, if we feel lonely, most of society then says, let me get a partner, something outside of myself. But really it's about meeting loneliness directly inside. And as we feel connected to the loneliness, we feel a greater connection and wholeness. And then we attract somebody, or we're available to meet somebody from a totally different vantage point because we've touched in on it, we've allowed it. So we can do it and do the internal work and meet others, friends or lovers in that intimacy. But if we say we want something and we don't have it, that means that there's a fear about it. Maybe I remember working with this gentleman who really said he wanted love, but he unconsciously said, through asking questions, I realized that he associated love with pain. Because his mom left him when he was a kid, so he has a lot of abandonment. He thought if I'm open, then I'm going to be vulnerable. But he didn't realize that the heart only hurts when it's closed. And so
one more time for the people in the back.
when you open your heart to all of life, you're free. Even if you're opening your heart to your closed heart. So if you're saying yes to the sensations that are here, the fears that come up, you actually experience what it is you wanted from a partner within yourself. So your heart only hurts when it's closed. And if you keep your heart open to yourself and say, it's okay that my heart's closed right now, that's actually the way out of it. And that's when we feel a deeper sense of peace. So becoming more self-aware, I think, is the first step. And then starting to have the tools to work it at the root within us. My process, I dated myself for 9 months and I really did deep work within myself. And as I was doing that, I was with a beautiful man in San Diego, inside and out, just gorgeous. And I no longer had this desire to be with him. And my mind didn't understand why. But because I was healing my relationship with my mom directly at the time, for 9 months, I was doing this work of and I can share about some of the methods that I used. I was doing the work to heal it within myself. And then I was no longer a match with him. And I didn't get it. I was like, why am I leaving this beautiful man? He's hot, he's beautiful, he's aligned. We had our lives planned out. I was going to get licensed. I was living in San Diego to be a therapist. And it just was no longer true for me. And I was honest about that. And I left. But in hindsight, I look back, it makes all the sense in the world. I'd healed the stuff with my mom directly, so I didn't need to play it out with him.
Wild.
And I had to be with the, crying in my Honda Prelude and driving to Santa Monica, being like, what did I do? And just trusting the process, just breathing through and being like, it's okay. And knowing that there was something else that was going to unfold. And meeting my husband now, like I actually didn't recognize him at first. And, you know, he was clear, but I wasn't, because he was not a template for anyone else that I knew.
Oh, interesting.
Because I had done so much work within myself, I didn't recognize him. It was a fresh new template. It wasn't looking through the lens of healing stuff with my mom and my dad. It was like in one day, a light switch just went on and I'm like, Emilio? I'm like, I am all in. I have so many stories about him and that journey, but, you know, wherever it will serve. But it was, I didn't recognize him at first. And oftentimes people say the stronger, I say the stronger the attraction, the deeper the wound. Yeah. So if you're with somebody and you're like, that one, your heart, you can't tell your heart not to feel that way. Yeah. You're going to feel that way. Follow that. But just know that there's more unconscious healing to do around that. And that's a stage of growth. We have to go through different stages to get to the higher octaves of love. Yeah. We have to go to kindergarten to get to our master's degree. And so not one is better than the other. We talk about the 4 stages of love. But we have to do the work to heal at the different stages to keep opening to what love really is.
That is so beautiful. I remember the first date that I had with Eric, similar experience where I'm like, you are amazing, but I don't feel like a psychopath. There must be something wrong, because every relationship that I had prior to him, it was this intense attraction, like, oh my God. And I was on my phone, like, I can't wait to see those great green, those little bubbles, you know, like, I can't wait for you to text me. Yeah. With Eric, it just felt like home.
That's right.
It was so calm.
Yes. And I think people misunderstand that then is not a good, healthy relationship. That's a very healthy relationship.
Yes.
And we can also use the like chaotic, obsessive type of attraction to heal. And then it can become a lot more healthy and easier.
Yeah. 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 It was so interesting. It was just like, oh, here we are. And I'm like, it doesn't. And then I was like, is this it?
Yeah.
Should I pursue this? Yeah. And there's that moment, and everyone in my world was like, yes. Yeah. So interesting. So can we dive into the 4 stages of love? Yeah. I just love this methodology.
Yeah. So I came up with this just to give context, because I think there are different phases and octaves of love. So again, it's kindergarten to master's. Not one's better than the other. You have to go through a kindergarten to get to the next level, but it's not completely sequential. So the first stage is very mainstream society. I need you. This is like, I need love. This is the Jerry Maguire, you complete me. Yes. I'm not whole in and of myself. And so I need my other half. And that creates a lot of anxiety, codependency, desperation. Like, I'm not healthy or happy unless I have my person. It's just not true. And so I want to help pop the bubble. And I think most of the conscious community is moving to stage 2. And stage 2 is I choose love. So this is like, I choose to use whatever relationship that I'm in to support me in healing what's coming up inside of me. Yeah. So I'm choosing to be loving with those parts of myself. I'm choosing to be loving and meet the parts inside that hurt with love. Yeah. And as I do that, because we do attract people that mirror the parents that we had challenges with, we're going to attract a partner that has both the positive and negative of our parents. But the challenges is what most people talk about. And so stage 2 is about, okay, what is this person, whether I'm their lover, a friend, what are they mirroring to me that's looking for healing inside of me? And again, we can do this work on our own, or we can do it if they're also available. So that could look like, I say I want tall, dark, and handsome, but I really am attracting emotionally unavailable because my father was emotionally unavailable. Not my story, but that's very common. And so, you know, instead of beating ourselves up, like, why do I keep attracting this? It's like, well, let's become emotionally available for those parts of inside of you that need love. And how do I question the misunderstandings? How do I be with the energy that I'm avoiding? And I'll talk about my methodology for that. But stage 2 stage 2 is choosing love. I choose love. I choose to be the presence of love for these parts of me. It's more psychological healing, and a lot of where the conscious community is.
We attract the distortions of our parents and also the gifts. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
It's a template for what love is. So whoever the caregiver was. Now, if you were raised by an aunt, a grandmother, a grandfather, whoever it was, that's the template for what we know to be love.
Gotcha.
Until we upgrade those misunderstandings, and then we discover what love really is.
Wow.
So yes. And oftentimes my experience, you know, having worked as a couples therapist in the past, we are all all that energy, you could say parts, you could say energy, you could say thoughts, they're just looking for acceptance. They're just looking for presence. And as we presence them, then they move on. Again, they're like the little kid. We give them a hug and they're off running again.
I need you.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I see you, sweetheart. I'm here. Okay. And then they're off running again. And so, especially if we do some like deeper work, that can be more maintenance. It can be a lot quicker. So it doesn't have to be hard. So stage 2, I choose love. Stage 3 is I am love. And this is where we start to go into the spiritual domain, where I discovered this because I was dating this beautiful tantric man, and in his presence, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I was high. Talk about Kundalini awakening. I really could have. I was just like really awake to radiance, and I thought it was because of him. And I think a lot of people are like, I fell in love, and then that was because of them. They made me feel this way. But what was true was that this man wasn't showing up in the ways that I was part of like a non-negotiable. He had commitment issues. And so he wasn't fully showing up. And it was hard for me to leave because I felt so high with him.
Those spiritual men, I tell you.
I mean, they got something. And I got a lot of spiritual lessons and gifts from this. And so I ended up leaving that relationship because it just wasn't true inside of my whole being. And I remember laying on the couch one day and I had this thought of him, and I thought of him and I was like, oh, and I got all excited because I was being so mindful. The next moment I was like, he's not here. And then I felt deflated. And I was like, the moment before I had the idea that he wasn't here, I just woke up to everything that I thought he had given me.
Wow.
And I realized that he didn't give me love, and therefore he couldn't take it away. It is who I am.
That is so good.
And that was a potent teaching that nobody, so then I'm not afraid of losing love because I am love. Nobody gave me love. No one can take it away.
That is so powerful, Alyssa. Oh my gosh.
And that was incredible. And that was high. And then I'm no longer in relationship because out of fear or manipulation. It's more about alignment. At this stage, it's more about what do I value and what does this person value? Do those align? Yeah. I knew that I could, because I was awake to love, because I am love, I could project that onto anyone. So my mind at the time was like, well, then who do you choose as a partner? Yeah. And it's more so about values and alignment because I really allowed myself to embody that love. And so that was beautiful, but it was still a limitation. And so this last stage is enlightened love. There is not, I love you. There's no I and there's no you. It's just love. It's no longer who I am. It's what I am. And this is where we go into Rumi and the poets because you can't put to words what is. It is the foundation and the fabric of life itself. Yeah. So that to support people in really accessing that more deeply, it's more of a removal of who I think I am. Yeah. So it's a removal of identity, of gender, of nationality, of form, and discovering the essence of who we are. So,
Can we feel that without plant medicine and breath work?
100%.
Okay. The first time I experienced that was in a mushroom ceremony like 15 years ago. And then shortly thereafter, breath work and then mushroom ceremony. I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is here all the time.
That's right.
Through my presence and awareness, I get to activate this energy. It just is.
Yeah. And what we activate is the awareness of it because it's always here. But sometimes that awareness, like the sky, it's clouded. We can't see it. And so for me, my spiritual path has been about who am I? And so like the removal of those clouds to awaken to who and what I am without any story of who I am, right? Thoughts come and go, feelings come and go, sensations come and go, but what doesn't come and go is the nature of what I am, is the nature of all of it. And there was a while in the spiritual journey, it was like, I got it, I lost it. And then it was like, okay, but if something's coming and going, it's not that, because it's always here. It is what I am.
Can you double click into that? Because I think that's so profound. It's like the love is always there. The connection is always there. We just block it.
Yes, that's right. So it's like we block it with the misunderstandings of who we think we are, or when we future trip about essentially all story creates separation. And yet there's something beyond the mind. And through breath work, through meditation, through different spiritual practices, we can wake up to what is here beyond the mind. It's always here. We just have less access or awareness of it. We're less conscious in that moment, but it doesn't change who we are.
Beautiful. Such an empowering thought. It's always here. The fullness of my essence, the fullness of my love, the fullness of my soul is always here. And through awareness and presence, I can activate it and become it.
Yeah. And for me, it's a removal. It's a removal of the idea that it's hard to awaken. It's the idea that of anything about who I am. Because then it's like, oh, it's so obviously here. Yeah. And I do think that plant medicine and breath work and different things can support. And my real practice has been stillness with meditation and self-inquiry. Who am I? And so as I remove it, it just becomes more obvious. The less I identify with, the more I am.
So good.
The less I identify with, the more I am.
You got a quote that I listened to that said, a death to the ego is a win for the soul.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It gave me like full body goosies when I listened to that.
Yeah, that was, I feel like I've combed through a lot around relationship. I feel really clear around relationships. And so part of spiritual inquiry for now is around business, combing through those misunderstandings. And how I came to that was I had set a pretty ambitious goal, as I normally do in business, and I didn't think I was going to hit it. And I realized I kept going into my mind to strategize about making sure I hit the goal, but I was avoiding feeling failure. I was avoiding feeling not good enough. And I checkmated myself. I was really honest to say, what am I avoiding? Am I willing to feel it rather than trying to strategize or win and by playing the game, by thinking that actually that would be winning if I hit the goal, because then I have to keep filling that goal or it needs to keep upping. Yeah. And so I asked myself, what am I afraid of feeling? And I really dropped in to be with the sensation of failure, of unworthiness, and actually feeling that in my body was incredibly liberating because I opened to the very thing that I was afraid of. And by doing that, I got all the energy I was using to resist it or trying to strategize my way beyond it. And then I was like, oh, this is freeing. I want to say yes to all of life. I don't want to try to manipulate the physical form in my outer life so that then I don't feel a certain way, because that's not real freedom. I'm trapped. And so I came to the acceptance of I wasn't going to hit the goal. And I really came to acceptance with being with these sensations and feelings. And then I realized that they didn't actually have any power over me. And by opening to them, by opening to failure, I felt success.
Wild.
Independent of hitting the goal.
Yes.
And so it was a death to my ego, what I thought I wanted. It was a win for my soul. It was a win for waking up to saying yes to all of life. And ironically, as I did that, we still had another week left in our launch, and it was the most successful launch.
I was going to say, you crushed it.
And it had to be that way, and I think having you and I being very similar, having a spiritual foundation to say, this is my spiritual assignment, Sam Skelly, using business as that to help us get free. That I think is one of the most powerful ways to live. And ironically, by freeing all that energy, then we have more creativity, more innovation. If we fail, I'm not a failure. Maybe that experiment failed, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have anything to do with who I am. And then I'm innovative, and I'm not on this roller coaster of I'm winning, I'm losing. It's just like, this is life. And I can stretch that capacity to be with it, and I'm free.
The moment I severed the connection between my self-worth and my revenue was the moment I felt completely liberated. But dang, that was that was a hard journey.
And it's harder when we are identifying our self-worth and our net worth. It is harder that way. So just a plug for, yes, it's courageous to sit and burn in the feeling that we want to avoid, but you've got 90 seconds.
You got 90 seconds.
You got 90 seconds. And as long as it's within the window of tolerance, you don't have big T trauma, and it's just opening, like you say, 10% more to that uncomfortable feeling, it can actually integrate into our nervous systems, and it doesn't have to be such a heavy weight that we carry in our life. It's 90 seconds.
I love that. So the 4 stages to wrap it up is I want love, I choose love, I am love, and just love.
Yeah.
You guys, that's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
And they all have gifts and wisdom and magic for us to experience in each one. So not one better than the other.
Have you met someone who's fully just resting in that 4th stage, just rocking out? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I experienced that with Emilio often. but I had to really question the idea that stage means it's like permanent. That once you hit that stage, then it's done.
I got you.
So there you can drop into, I mean, there are moments where there's just deep oneness, and it's not even connection, because that would imply too. It's just the, you know, and then there's times of illusion and misunderstanding, and then, you know, using the work to come back to center, to come back to truth. But yeah, I think there's more enlightened relationships. Obviously it's not totally true, because any words doesn't make sense. There's not a person that then is, you know, but it's just realizing that it's natural. And it's just us that creates the ego, the mind, that creates a lot of the misunderstanding, but it's already here. Just less people are awake to it.
One of the things I love most about your work is your methodology and how you really meet people where they're at. And you teach them how to open the door that's most practical and comfortable for them, so that they can open up the doors to their other ways of being, processing, and healing. So can you talk a little bit about your 5 stages of change?
I love that you know so much about the work. It's so beautiful. Thank you for doing the research, for just setting this up, because it's so beautiful to be able to meet people. We want to meet people where they are and help develop them in new ways. So I'll share the bigger context for how my methodology and how I work with people, and some of the nuances, so that those listening can be like, where do I resonate? What's easiest for me? What may be a stretch to develop more of my full range? So awareness is first, compassionate awareness. Because if we're aware and we're like, why am I doing that? And I'm like,
compassionate awareness. Good nuance.
Yeah. So that it's like, oh, I'm aware, but I'm not caught in identity. Because anytime you want to get stuck with something, you judge it or you identify with it. So the moment you accept it, you're free of it. Ironically, most people think like, I need to judge myself. Like the inner critic essentially is just trying to have us do better next time. Yeah. And it's like, oh, thank you, inner critic. Rather than criticizing the critic, which is another layer of criticism, it's like, oh, the critic is just my inner critic is just trying to make sure that I'm safe, that I do better, so that then I'm liked, so that then I'm safe. Safety is this the root of what it really wants. It wants to survive its existence. So compassionate awareness, rather than like, I'm criticizing myself. It's like, oh, there's that part of me, not who I am. And this is how it's trying to serve me. This is how it's trying to support me. Not efficiently, but it's trying. Yeah. So awareness is first, and then we go into acceptance. And acceptance, I think a lot of people move from awareness to behavior change, but acceptance is really the medicine of all of the thoughts, all of the feelings, all of the sensations, the unconscious drives, where we are in our life. If we can just fully accept what's here and now, because judging what already has doesn't change the past, we have all of our energy online, and then we can change it where we move into aligned action.
That is so powerful. I think oftentimes people think acceptance is complacency.
That's right. Yeah. And it is not.
No.
It's so, please say more about that.
Yeah. You know, the reason why that jogged my memory is I remember when I was doing a lot of work with women who struggled with body image and emotional eating, and that was what I shared. I was like, we have to accept where we're at. They're like, well, I can't accept myself at this weight. Yeah. I'm never going to change.
That's right.
And I'm like, oh, girl.
Because ironically, if we don't accept it, then we're going to overeat, and then we just spin cycle in the same patterns. So accepting it does not mean complacency. I love that you brought that up, because it's such a big misunderstanding. Acceptance is internal. Yes. Just like we were talking about. I can leave the relationship if, say, my partner cheated on me and that doesn't work for me. I could leave pissed off or at peace. This is the option to find your own peace, because that's a gift to you. Because being pissed off doesn't actually hurt them, it hurts you. Yeah. So it's just more intelligent, you know? And so acceptance on 5 levels. This is the 5 levels of change. Somatically, so the sensations. How do I breathe into the sensations that are here?
You guys know all about this.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. And a good question is, can I be with this? Can this just be allowed for this moment? And so just allowing it as a sensation, it moves through. And then emotionally, can I bring compassion or love to the part of me that needs it? So it's not, you know, that's the acceptance on the emotional. The mental is like, oh, here are those thoughts. There's the critic, you know, and you can find how the critic is trying to support you by asking, what do I fear would happen if it goes away? It's like, oh, if I don't criticize myself, then I'm not going to change. Well, is that true? Is it working for me? And then if it's not, then be willing to test something different. And then there's the behavioral. And then it's like, okay, my body is this weight. And if I want to change it, it's like, I can still create the change, but can I accept where I am right now?
Yeah.
Because if I'm fighting with it, I'm creating resistance, which then doesn't give me my energy to actually make a change. It makes it harder to move forward.
This is so powerful because I think most of our world, when it comes to personal development, they're only focused on behavior change.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, even back when I was a mindset coach and I did a lot of mindset coaching on myself, that was such a big part of it. Change your behavior, change your behavior, change your behavior. I'm like, that only works for so long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because we think we need more willpower.
Yeah.
We think it needs to be harder. Then we've got, an overdeveloped masculine where it's like push, and there's a place for that, but we've all done that.
Yeah.
And really it can be about bringing that acceptance, getting out of our own way. And so, just giving even if it's like, I accept the resistance that's here right now.
Yes.
That's the way out. You can be judging yourself for decades. And the moment you accept yourself, you're back in the stream of well-being. You feel peace. It's like, I'm supposed to be judging myself right now. I'm back in. I'm free.
That was a huge thing in my relationship that you supported me with. It's supposed to be like this.
Yeah. Yes.
It's supposed to.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, it's supposed to. Okay. Every single time I get triggered, I'm like, I'm supposed to feel like this.
Yes, because then you get to look inside.
Yeah.
Because if we don't heal it with whoever, our employee, our mother, our partner, whoever it is, when we're triggered, we're like, oh, what's looking for my own acceptance? What's looking for my love? How do I question a misunderstanding? How do I allow this sensation? How do I bring love to this misunderstanding, this part of me that was just misunderstood? That's when we work through it.
Full 100% responsibility
That's
for
right.
our lives.
That's right.
Is the path of freedom.
It is sexy.
Oh, gosh. Liberating.
Yeah.
Liberating. It's like the dissolving of all codependency.
That's right.
And the coming home to wholeness.
That's right. And we already are whole. And it's just about, again, parting the clouds for us to more fully see and embody that. And I want to talk a little bit about this kind of push-pull dynamic, because I think most of society comes up with, these mainstream thinks that if I judge it, then I'll change it. If I don't accept it.
Yes.
But it's actually by accepting it, we shift it.
Yes.
And so, a lot of people will have a goal. They'll be like, I want to lose the weight. I want to grow my business. I want to call in the person. And that's like having a foot on the gas, but that's our conscious brain is only responsible for 5% of our behavior change. 5%.
That's just so wild.
So when we're saying we want something, that's like such a small part of what is capable by just relying on that. And people say, push harder, you need more force, wake up earlier. I love Tony Robbins and I think he's really evolving, but it used to be this like, go for it. And then people burn out.
I literally grew up in the Tony Robbins world since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's all I knew for so much of my life. So I hear you, but you're right. He is evolving and changing.
Totally evolving.
That, yeah.
And I think also like that, I think that it was, there's so many, like I look back and there was also the time of our parents where it was very cathartic. It was like, hit a pillow and get it out. It's much more subtle and nuanced in our generation now. But there was a place for that because a lot of people were suppressed for the time. A lot of women needed to be good and couldn't have anger. And so this was like the medicine for the time.
Yeah.
And it was important. And then we've sort of evolved. And
I told so many clients, I'm like, go buy a pool noodle and just smash it on the bed like back in the day.
Yes. And I think some people still need it. And so like understanding where people are, what's going to support them and how to evolve them. So like if we're super heady, then meeting somebody with mindset work is really great. So it creates the safety, it creates the connection, and then support them with somatic work. Yeah. And that creates a lot of like, mindset work's great because it gives you quick wins. Whereas somatic work also can give you quick wins, but you need to create safety to be able to do that. Where mindset, everyone is very mind dominated. So it's easy just to unpack misunderstandings or question a belief or an identity. Identity a little harder, but depending on how open their mind is, but meeting people where they need and then helping evolve them. So it was great where we were with Tony back in the day when he first kind of popped up was like, I'm empowered. I can change this. Yeah. It's great. I change, my life changes. Yes, 100%. And then it's sort of begun. So it was like behavior change, and then mindset work. And that became really popular. And now it's somatic work. And all of them have their place. All of them are important. And And we want a really holistic, integrative way so that we can really meet ourselves the way that we need. And I think when there's like a core challenge that we've run up against, fear of failure, unworthiness, we want to have a few different prongs or ways in to resolve it at the root. Because if I keep thinking I'm unworthy and I feel it in my body, it's like that's powerful to feel it, but then we also want to use the mindset to question that misunderstanding.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so there's different ways in. But, you know, in terms of the behavior change, I think a lot of people are like, I need the force and the willpower. And yet, you know, part of the unconscious training that I do is about questioning the motives. It's like the foot on the gas, the foot on the brake. So 95% is the subconscious. That's what creates behavior change. So if we're like, I want to grow my business, but I'm scared of being seen. The foot on the gas is I want to have a relationship. The foot on the brakes, the 95% is I'm afraid of being hurt. I was hurt in my last relationship. So we've got this like push-pull, competing intention. And rather than needing to push harder, it's about getting out of our own way. This is the unconscious. So then we can ask ourselves questions like, what do I fear would happen if I got what I want?
Yes. Ooh.
And so it's like, okay,
So
what do I fear?
wild.
So if I grew my business, I'll kind of ground this. So instead of pushing harder, it's about getting out of our own way. So I worked with this woman who kept plateauing. And it really is helpful to see plateaus. So this works well when you've been trying to reach a goal, but you haven't been able to.
In business or like anything.
Anything. It could be weight. Like I can't lose the last 10 pounds. It could be a financial goal, a set point, right? So looking at what are those set points and then asking yourself, what do I fear would happen if I got the goal? So I asked this woman, she's like, I keep hitting up against, you know, 250,000, which is a lot, but she was hiring coaches. She was growing her team. She wasn't able to hit this. And I said, what do you fear would happen if you made more? And she started laughing. She's like, kind of like, bitch, I don't fear making more money. What are you talking about? And I'm like, just slow down, get mindful because you're doing it. There's an unconscious fear. So let's see what comes up.
Oh, this is so good.
Get present and just tune in. And I said, if I make more than $250,000, I fear. And then tears just started streaming down her face. And she realized that when her mom got a raise, her parents got a divorce.
Whoa.
And so she had this competing desire that if she grew, then she wouldn't have a strong marriage. It was either or.
Wow.
And we have our own wisdom. We have our own knowing, but we just have to have the right questions and presence and kind of guidance to unlock that, to hear that. So it wasn't about pushing harder. It was like, oh, how do I see through that misunderstanding? Bringing awareness to it, bringing acceptance. Of course, that part wanted to have a strong marriage. That was really important to her. And look at her parents' relationship was different than hers. That's unconscious programming. And then giving her permission to really prioritize a strategic goal of what does a healthy marriage look like? And how do you honor that this year while growing your team and growing your leadership and income and impact? And so just understanding that it doesn't need to be push harder. Right. And I think there's a place for that. But it can also be about getting out of our own way. That's more the unconscious work.
Is awareness enough to shift that stuckness?
Sometimes.
Okay.
And if the awareness is compassionate and you're not identified and there's not a lot of stickiness with it. If it's a core wound, if it's been a pattern that's been pretty deeply conditioned, you're going to need more than awareness. And I would say most of the time you need more than that because if you could have changed on your own, you wouldn't have needed to hire a coach or work with someone.
Absolutely. It's fascinating just how we're made, you know? It's like, and it's what's so fascinating to me is when we get down to it, when we change our relationship to pain and we change our relationship to suffering, it will unlock so much of this work that you're teaching right now. And I feel most people, their addiction to suffering and their relationship to pain is holding them back from their greatness.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, we just need safety. I keep coming back to safety because all of the ways that we look for approval, belonging, acceptance in the world, it's so that then we feel safe, so we can relax. And with your work with breath, you know, you can access a safety by accessing it with the breath. I think it's really beautiful and powerful work. And as, you know, there's other ways we can feel safety, but as we insource that safety, some of these other things reveal themselves, insights. We no longer have to play out these coping strategies or safety strategies. And we realize that what we were looking for in the world is actually here now before we go looking for it. But we had to slow down enough and create the safety to see it.
You've mentioned a few times slowing down.
Yeah.
And really getting with our parts.
Yeah.
Because those little child parts need a different pacing. Can you just talk a little bit about that, especially for the woman who's listening to this podcast who, I know you guys are busy. You're doing all the things all the time, right? High achieving. We're doing all sorts of things. Talk a little bit about the pacing in which we need to operate at in order to really reach these parts of us.
If you want to go faster, slow down.
Baby.
It's like I'm an achieving type. I get that. My personality is let's go. I woke up like running out of my mom's womb. Like I was here, and there's some somatic psychotherapy that says your birth story, how you were born, sets the pace for your life. It feels very accurate for me.
Did you just fly out of there?
I was almost born
with a
in
laptop
the car.
in
You know. Yeah.
So good.
So with the inner work, 80% of the game is I would say 80% of the game is the inner work.
Yeah.
And 100% of the inner work is about slowing down. Because if you're again, the conscious mind is only 5% of change. So if you really do want to create the change, you have the willingness and the courage to slow down. Most people don't slow down because they're afraid of what they'd be faced with if they did. But and I think the pandemic really confronted a lot of people around that. And it's a gift to slow down so that we're not running from those conditionings and those made up fears that feel really true, right? We're trying to, and I will be the first to share, like I really hustled so that I felt worthy and that I felt like I could belong in the world, and underneath that so that then I feel safe. So I get it. And yet the game will always, like life is designed to show you where you're not free. It's designed to give you a challenge for you to be confronted. And if you're just trying to win on the surface level of like achieving,
baby,
you're going to burn out. Something's going to happen, and that's not a bad thing. And I want whoever's listening to be like, if they're going through a challenging time, this is an upgrade. This is an opportunity to look inside around what's looking for your love and really bring presence, unravel the misunderstandings so that you can live more open-hearted and open-minded. And from there, you still create, but it's from contribution. It's from creativity. It's from aliveness. It's not so that then we feel enough. And sometimes we have to dance our dance. And that's okay too. So if it's like, I know I'm doing this and I can't, so it's okay. Life will present something that's challenging and you'll be offered to look, and you can choose then too, or not. There'll be repeated opportunities. It's like life is so kind that it wants you to get free. It's going to show you what's not.
What a beautiful
left.
frame. Kind and hilarious.
Yeah.
I find sometimes the lessons come in these hilarious packages where I'm like, really? Really? In your work, you talk about how to argue, how to have agreements for arguments. And you have really beautiful wisdom on conflict resolution and how to really be in it. And I know I extracted a ton of value from that, just working through some of those patterns with Eric. But I'd love for you to share your belief on that and how we can have argument, like intelligent arguments, I guess.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think arguments are bad, and they're not. That's okay. It's just showing you something that's unresolved. And anger is that a boundary's been crossed. So you want to be authentic. You want to be honest. Sometimes, a lot of times people go into arguments and they're not in their prefrontal cortex or more in your like fight or flight, and you're not thinking it through. So if you argue a lot, that happens to be a pattern in your relationship. When you're not fighting, map out how you want to argue. Actually map it out so that you have higher functioning on board at that point. Okay, I want to do it this way. And the more you understand yourself, the more you can communicate to people you love that you may be in an argument with around what you need in that moment. Because sometimes there's like the turtle and the tiger. So sometimes the tiger's the one that gets louder so that they feel heard. But then the turtle usually is the opposite. The one, you can be a different role in different relationships. And the turtle's the one that gets quiet and curls in. The turtle's the one that you want to really create that safety inside so it feels safe to express. But the tiger needs to do the same. The tiger needs to create the safety so it de-escalates. It's not so rageful so that you can actually meet in the middle. And so understanding that dynamic and then saying, when we're in an argument, I'm not going to name call. I'm going to show respect. I'm going to share my truth. One thing that my husband and I do is we say, can you hold? So if I feel like I just want to vent or like consciously complain or get something out, I'll ask him, can you hold? And if he says yes, that means he's aware enough in that moment to be able to listen to whatever I'm saying and not take it personally.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so I'll be like, you're the worst husband in the world. I ham it up because then it just wants expression. It just wants to come up and out. And so I'll just let that part and that energy come up and be expressed. And then we laugh and it moves on.
That's so powerful.
It's really beautiful. So like having a safe place for that to come up, maybe somebody's partner would be like, they are not ready for that, then just journal and just get all of the energy out. You have to be real to heal. Like you got to get the energy out. Just keep writing. Don't reread it. Freeform writing. A lot of people know this. So you can just get all the energy out and the anger. Don't reread it. It's like taking out the trash, throw it away, burn it, whatever you want to do. And then share like at the heart of it. What is this really about? Usually it's a vulnerability, right? And we want to share that vulnerable truth and that not defense, not blame, because that's just going to create more of that in the relationship. And then we actually meet the turtle and the tiger that's like, okay, here we go.
Eric and I have a similar practice but we don't use words. We just use sounds.
Ooh.
So if I'm
that's helpful.
Annoyed at him around something, he's like, show me, tell me everything. And I'm like, our neighbors are probably like, those guys are psychopaths.
That reminds me of Garden State where it's like, blah, blah,
exactly. And then I'm like, and then I cry and I scream and he's just like, his steady presence, he's just holding it. I'm like, God, I feel so much better now. It's so great. Ellison Armstrong has a similar thing where she's like taking out the trash. She's like, here's the trash can, just barf in it. Women just need to barf in the trash can.
Just get it out. Don't hold on to it. Yeah. And men sometimes are more physical in the sense of how they process, not always, but I think the importance of this with Gabor Mate's work, becoming more available around psychosomatic work of like repressing anger and how that can show up with autoimmune and cancer and things like that. It's really motivating to do the inner work and how that really affects all aspects of our life.
Yeah, if we didn't have a reason before and now we do, it's going to affect your health. Right, I just tell my mom it's anti-aging and she just jumps on it. I'm like, Mom, somatic work,
I love it.
Like helps with
and
wrinkles.
It's true. It's true.
I know.
That's the thing.
I literally...
I love that you're using the egoic carrot to be like, this will help you achieve, fall more in love, look better. It's true. And obviously we do it for deeper reasons.
You're going to find something so much greater than smooth skin.
Yeah. Yes, and little Trojan horse.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. It is absolutely an honor to walk this path with you, to have you as a dear friend and a leader, light worker on this path, just inspiring so many people. And you and I are aligned in the way how we do business. And it's just so rad. And I love geeking out with you on, you and I've always said we have so much range in our relationship. Right. We can meet each other in so many places.
The depth and the laughter.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to honor you for who you are in the world and how much you inspire and motivate and transform, and the energy that you liberate through your beingness in your thousands of students all over the world. It's just incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love you.
So I love you too. Where can our community find you, connect with you, learn more about you, learn more about your work?
Thank you. Yeah, they can go to alyssanobriga.com. We do a certification program every year, training and all the things I was sharing. And then also on Instagram, Alyssa Nobriga on Instagram.
So you launch that once a year?
We launch our certification once a year, and we're going to start opening enrollment because we have bonuses to support people. I love business and I love bringing this work into business, but also in how to deeply and profoundly help somebody change their life, learning to facilitate with this methodology, with the 5 levels of change, and really changing your life and then feeling more confident to be able to support somebody else in doing the same. So it's like doing your own work, holding space for others in a really confident way, and then starting or scaling a business.
So people will do that certification if they want to become a coach or if they just want to go on a personal development journey.
That's right.
Amazing.
That's right. If you want confidence in clients, that's the program.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been so fun.
I love you.
I love you so much.
Can't be contained.